Mustangs are more than just wild horses. They are living symbols of the untamed spirit of North America. Descended from horses brought by Spanish explorers in the 16th century, they have roamed the plains, deserts, and mountains for hundreds of years. Once numbering in the millions, Mustang populations have dwindled over time due to habitat loss, roundups, and competition for grazing land. Today, it's estimated that fewer than 90,000 remain in the wild, scattered across remote stretches of the western United States. To see one running free is to witness a piece of history, powerful, unbroken, and deeply connected to the land. And in certain places, legends are born around the rarest of them all. This is the story of one such legend, the last Mustang of a forgotten valley, and the man who would fight to keep him free. The wind in eastern Oregon doesn't just blow, it carves. It cuts through sagebrush and juniper like a blade through old leather, carrying dust in summer, ice in winter, and the weight of forgotten stories all year long. I've lived in the Silvies Valley for 62 years, long enough to watch the snow come sideways in February, the grass burn gold in August, and the great wild horse herds fade from thundering reality into whispered legend. When I was a boy, my father would wake me before dawn. We'd ride out into the open country and watch hundreds of Mustangs move across the valley floor like a living river, brown and black and white, flowing over the earth until the ground itself trembled beneath their hooves. I thought they'd run here forever, but the roundups came. The land shrank. One by one, they were taken away, until only one remained. The first time I saw him was in that blue-gray moment before dawn decides to become morning. I was checking fence lines after a hard frost, my boots crunching on ground that sounded hollow, my breath puffing white in the bitter cold. The creek near the cottonwoods was still running, though ice had claimed half its surface, and there he was. A lone stallion standing motionless in the mist. His coat was the color of storm clouds that hang low over Steen's Mountain. His mane was tangled with burrs, his ribs showing through a frame built for endless running. But his eyes were deep, dark, and utterly still. He saw me. I saw him. Neither of us moved for what felt like forever. Most wild Mustangs spook at the first sign of humans, gone in a flicker of tail and spray of dirt, leaving nothing but hoof prints and echoes. But this one just stood there, head high, watching with an intelligence that made my chest tighten. Later, I asked around town. The old-timers called him Ghost, said he'd been roaming alone for years, keeping his distance from everything and everyone. The last of the Silvies Valley herd. That winter came down like a hammer. The kind of cold that crawls into your bones and makes itself at home. Nights dropped well below zero. Days weren't much warmer. Snow buried the sagebrush until the whole valley looked wrapped in white wool. Each morning I saddled my old mare Tess and rode out to the creek. I'd break the ice so he could drink. At first he stayed back on the ridge, watching. I pretended not to notice him, kept my head down, worked slow and quiet. Eventually, I started scattering hay in the shadow of the willows, close enough for him to find, far enough from the road that nobody else would see. I told myself it was just to give him a fighting chance. But deep down, I knew the truth. I needed him as much as he needed me. Days turned into weeks. He began showing up more often. Sometimes I'd hear him before I saw him, a soft snort, the careful crunch of snow under hooves. Other times I'd catch just the flick of his tail disappearing into the hills. He was still wild, still untouched. But he wasn't a ghost anymore. Then came the talk of poachers. Men with snowmobiles and rifles bragging at the feed store about easy pickings in the backcountry. They saw dollar signs where I saw the last verse of a song this land used to sing. The Bureau of Land Management was blunt. We can't justify sending resources for a single animal. But to me, he wasn't just a single animal. He was memory made flesh. He was the thunder of 10,000 hooves distilled into one beating heart. The blizzard hit in early February like the fist of winter itself. Wind howled through the junipers, rattling my windows until I thought the glass might shatter. Then came the snow, thick, fast, erasing the world until there was nothing but white. By the second day, drifts had swallowed half my fence line. I couldn't stop thinking about him out there in that frozen hell, with nothing but instinct and stubbornness to keep him alive. On the third day, I saddled Tess. The cold bit at her ears. Ice gathered on my beard before we'd gone 100 yards. We pushed into the storm, the world reduced to gray and white and the endless roar of wind. We found him at the river bend, half buried in snow, sides heaving, head drooping low. I dropped from the saddle and began smashing at the ice on the creek with my rifle butt. My fingers went numb fast, the cold biting clear to the bone. But finally, black water ran free. He stepped forward slowly, dipped his muzzle, and drank. Long, deliberate swallows, as if each drop was a thread tying him back to life. That's when I heard them. Snowmobiles. The low growl of engines carried on the wind, growing closer. I lifted my rifle and fired twice into the air. The sound cracked through the storm, sharp and final. The engine noise faded into silence. When I turned back, he was still there. Snow clung to his mane, ice crusted his whiskers. And in that moment, standing together in the storm, something passed between us. Not ownership, not even friendship. Something older, a recognition that we were both fighting for the same thing, the right to exist wild in a world growing tamer by the day. Spring came late to the valley that year. When it finally arrived, the hills exploded with wildflowers, and the air turned sweet with sage after rain. One morning I stepped out with my coffee and saw him on the ridge, stronger now, coat glossy in the morning sun, and beside him stood a young mare, her coat the color of warm sand, head bent peacefully to graze. I don't know where she came from, or how he found her in all that empty country. But I knew then that the valley wasn't empty anymore. Some people say one horse can't change anything, that the old ways are gone for good, that wildness is just a memory we tell ourselves to feel better about what we've lost. But out here in Oregon, watching Ghost and his mare move across the same ground where thousands once ran, I learned something different. Sometimes one is enough to start again. The wind still carves through the valley, carrying dust and ice and stories. But now it carries something else too. The sound of hooves on stone. The promise that some wild things refuse to fade quietly into history. Ghost taught me that survival isn't just about staying alive. It's about staying true to what you are, even when the whole world tells you your time is over. And maybe, just maybe, it's about having faith that somewhere out there, others like you are still running free, waiting for their chance to come home.